As Carl Jung stated, the labyrinth is a primordial symbol. It is a path of enlightenment, awareness, rejuvenation, and even rebirth, depending on the traveler's intention. Reflection and contemplation while walking both the curves and spiral of the labyrinth allow the wisdom of the divine feminine to bathe and enter one's being. Walking the path of the labyrinth is a request for wisdom and clarity with the willingness and patience to walk and wait as an exchange for what the divine feminine may share. This is a classic labyrinth, the original labyrinth form. With its curves, circular form, and single path, it is feminine in nature. The right angles are a masculine element. In this clip, Freddie Silva states that the labyrinth represents a journey to the underworld and the reconciliation of dark and light forces.
Further along the valley there is another energy hotspot, marked by an ancient labyrinth, the symbol of the opposing forces of dark and light that must be reconciled before the pilgrim can venture into the other world.
Once a symbol and its archetypal meanings have taken hold in humanity's consciousness, they evolve and their meaning, interpretation, and application expands. This happens both organically and by design, typically by the establishment. Throughout history, symbols have been appropriated by the establishment and altered to hide their true power and serve the need of the establishment. The labyrinth is one of the most powerful feminine symbols to be appropriated and patriarchally transformed. Exploring the power and potential of symbols by adding to them or altering them is not an inherently bad thing. Symbols are tools, and we are meant to use them to access and explore the divine. Though there are many changed and adapted labyrinths, the original images of the labyrinth have always been present, thus the original meaning has also. Humanity is rediscovering the power and value of archetypal symbols, and the labyrinth is primary among these. The resurgence of the labyrinth is part of humanity's rediscovering and raising the divine feminine. The first patriarchal shift of this divine symbol was to turn curves into right angles. This is a common alteration of feminine symbols. While changing the curves to angles does change energy from feminine to masculine, it does not change it from being a labyrinth. Walking the path still takes one in a spiral pattern, which is a feminine element. One could argue that such a labyrinth would simply be seeking from the divine masculine. The second, more prominent change was to create paths that went nowhere, creating a maze where one could get lost. Instead of silencing the mind to receive wisdom, one must now apply thought to the journey. This is a problem-solving exercise. While this may be a different form of gaining wisdom, it is masculine in nature. Figuring out what needs to be done is a polarity of asking for wisdom or guidance. While the maze does serve a purpose, it is masculine rather than feminine. The possibility of being lost can create confusion and fear, which are essential elements of the patriarchal control mechanism. This actually began with the term itself, as labyrinth comes from the Greek word labyrinthos, which does mean maze. A mechanism of appropriation and control is to make terms interchangeable that should not be, thus causing a confusion of meaning or changing meaning altogether. Labyrinth and maze are examples of this. Where once the labyrinth was solely a means to seek wisdom, the term labyrinthian became synonymous with confusion. This is a classic and typical example of patriarchal appropriation. This is not to say that someone made a conscious decision to create this change. This is simply how masculine patriarchal energy functions. In the context of a patriarchal society, one can even consider such changes organic. As described, the labyrinth is an introspective journey comprised of one path that is traveled to the center and back. A labyrinth is not a place where one can become lost or confused. It is not a maze, nor is it maze-like. These are mutually exclusive entities whose terms and meanings should not be interchanged. Even though labyrinthian is typically used to mean maze-like, this is actually a misnomer. In all cultures, the labyrinth has the meaning of an entangling and confusing representation of the world of matriarchal consciousness. This statement from 1964 is an example of the shift of the meaning and purpose of the labyrinth by patriarchal establishment from a one-way path of enlightenment to a structure where confusion is part of the symbol's meaning. Confusion, or the possibility of getting lost, has been an integral part, if not primary part, of the meaning or purpose of a labyrinth for much of human history. Labyrinthian is a common term to mean maze-like, complex navigation, causing confusion, or the likelihood of getting lost. In truth, these are masculine archetypes which have no place in association with a classic labyrinth or feminine symbol. It is common for symbols to evolve and morph over time as they are adopted by different cultures. This statement may have been true for a time, but is not true for all time. In other words, it is true in perception only. Remember, man did not create the labyrinth, but man did create the maze. A truthful aspect of the contemporary meaning of labyrinth is the notion of solution or resolution. A labyrinth walk is a deep cleansing breath for the soul. One walks a classical labyrinth to achieve some type of resolve. It is a solution to some form of negativity, no matter the magnitude. In this way, solving a maze is similar, particularly metaphorically. It is a metaphor for solving the problems of life, and as such, solving a maze correlates to solving a life issue. These statements, in and of themselves, are not misappropriations as such, but rather a reflection of what the term labyrinth came to mean globally. In this statement, Jung actually makes a bit of a distinction between the labyrinth and a maze when he mentions false trails. The resurgence of the labyrinth is helping to correct this perceptive inaccuracy.